Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. We are from group 3 and the topics we are going to present is respiratory system. My name is Shahirah bin ZAINI, student ID 2021467944. We'll start the presentation with anatomy, upper respiratory tract topic. I would like to explain the structure of the ample of respiratory tract consists of nose, mouth, pharynx, epiglottis, larynx and trachea. The external openings of the nose are known as the nostril. The nasal septums divide the cavity into two cavities, also known as fossae. Each cavity is the continuation of one of the two nostrils. The nasal cavity is the uppermost part of the respiratory system. The wall spread into chambers is known as the septum. The tiny hairs called the epithelial cilia are found immediately within the nose. The nose is lined with a mucous membrane. Next, the pharynx, which is commonly known as throat. The pharynx is divided into three regions: the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. The nasopharynx is flanked by the concha of the nasal cavity, and the top of nasopharynx are the pharyngeal tonsil. The nasopharynx located behind the posterior nasal apparatus. The oropharynx located behind the opening of the oral cavity, and the laryngeal pharynx located behind the inlet opening of the larynx. The larynx, also known as the voice box, in triangle chamber located between the pharynx and trachea. The larynx is protected and support part a series of 9 separate cartilages. Let's move to the paranasal sinuses that lined with mucous membrane that have a tiny hairs on them, ciliated epithelium. This mucous membrane produces a secretion that runs down through the nose and throat. These sinuses are named from the skull bones that contain them: frontal, ethmoidal, sphenoidal, and maxillary. A sinus can be a set or cavity in any organ or tissue. However, the term of sinus commonly refers to the paranasal sinuses, a type of paranasal sinus, a hollow space in the bones around the nose. There are two large frontal sinuses in the frontal bone, which form the lower part of the forehead and reach over the eye socket and eyebrow. The frontal sinuses are lined with the cells that make mucus to keep the nose from drying out. The last pair in the apical sinuses, which are irregularly shaped, are separated from the orbital eye cavity, but just a thin layer of bones are found in the intermediate sponge between the nose and the eyes. The tonsil, also called the palatine tonsil, are located. The nasopharyngeal tonsil are high up and behind the nose and the roof of the mouth. The laryngopharynx is closed off by the epiglottis, a leaf-like structure that is situated at the base of the tongue. Last but not least, trachea, which is commonly known as a windpipe, is located directly in front of esophagus. That's all from me. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is SYAFIQAH binti FIKRI with ID number 2021855998, and I will be explaining regarding the lower respiratory tract. The lower respiratory system or lower respiratory tract consists of the trachea, the bronchi and bronchiole, and also the alveoli, which make up the lungs. These structures pull in air from the upper respiratory system, absorb the oxygen, and release carbon dioxide in exchange. Other structures, namely thoracic cage or rib cage and the diaphragm, protect and support this function. Next is trachea. The trachea is a tube less than an inch in diameter covered by cartilaginous rings. It located at the bottom of the larynx down behind the sternum until it branches into smaller tubes, the bronchi. During inhalation, air filtered and warmed by the upper respiratory system passes from the pharynx and larynx into the trachea. The oxygenated air from the lungs passes back out through the trachea during exhalation. The cartilaginous rings support the tube of the trachea and prevent it from overexpanding or from collapsing, like when you suck on a straw too hard. They are C-shaped with a gap on the posterior side. This allows the trachea to bend when the esophagus presses against it as food is swallowed. And also, each bronchus divided and subdivide into smaller bronchioles. At the end of bronchiole, there are alveoli that are also known as air sac. And then we move on to the alveoli. Alveoli are microscopic air sacs served by the bronchioles. Hundreds of million alveoli exist inside each lung. There are the terminal ends of the respiratory tract and the sites of external respiration, like the exchange of gases between the air and the bloodstream. During inhalation, the alveoli fill with air from the bronchioles. Oxygen diffuses through the alveoli into networks of pulmonary capillaries that surround them and is pumped through the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide from the oxygenated blood diffuses from the capillaries into the alveoli and is expelled through exhalation. The next is lungs. The lungs are responsible for gas exchange between the air we breathe and our body. They are protected inside the thoracic cage. The left lung has two lobes and is slightly smaller in volume than the right. It curves in at the cardiac notch to accommodate the heart. The right lung has three lobes. It is slightly shorter because the diaphragm muscle sits higher below it to accommodate the liver. During inhalation, air flows into the lungs through the bronchi and bronchioles. Oxygen from the air is then absorbed into the bloodstream, which means it passes through millions of microscopic sacs and then into the alveoli, feeding into surrounding capillaries. Carbon dioxide waste diffuses the opposite way from the capillaries to the alveoli. The lung expels the deoxygenated air during exhalation. That's all from me. Thank you. We pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum and good evening. My name is NAJIBAH binti Muhammad FADZIL from BA 2353C, group number 3. I will continue about the physiology of the upper respiratory tract. It has three functions such as air conditioning, defense against pathogen, and the sense organ. The upper respiratory tract includes all the structure include nose up to vocal cord called larynx. These are known as upper airways. It's involved in the conduction or the movement of air into and out of the body. Upper respiratory tract organs provide a route for air to move between outside atmosphere and the lung. They also clean humidity and warm the incoming air. However, no gas exchange occurs in this organ. Firstly, the air enters human body through nostril, which then passes to nasal cavity. The air is filtered by specialized hair-like structure in the nasal cavity called cilia. The sense of the nasal cavity secretion mucus, which help to track the dust particles and block it from moving ahead. The nasal cavity also provides warmth and adds moisture to the air. The nasal cavity has specialized sensory cells that are sensitive to smell and odor. And that is the reason why our nose is a sense organ. The nasal cavity opens into a much wider cavity called pharynx. The pharynx is a common passage for air and food. It is easily visible when you open your mouth widely. The region is just behind the tongue. This is the reason why while you're having food, sometimes you suddenly cough because the food accidentally entered the other pipe because the pharynx has a cartilaginous flap-like structure that called epiglottis. This epiglottis closes the windpipe when we swallow the food. It prevents the entry of the food in the windpipe. So, while swallowing, if the epiglottis is partially closed wind off followed by pharynx, is a region called larynx or known as a voice box. The larynx on male is often seen protruding out, and this is called Adam's apple. From here, the air passes through 4-inch long tube-like structure called trachea.
Thank you to the previous presenter. Now let's continue with the lower respiratory tract. What is lower respiratory tract? The lower respiratory system or lower respiratory tract consists of trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and also alveoli, which make up the lung. This structure pull in air from the upper respiratory system, absorb the oxygen, and release carbon dioxide in exchange. Other structure named the thoracic cage or rib cage, and the diaphragm protect and support this fracture. The trachea is a tube less an inch of diameter, cover the cartilaginous wings. It extends from the bottom of larynx down behind the sternum until the branches into smaller tubes, the bronchi. During inhalation, air filtered and warmed by the upper respiratory system passes the pharynx and larynx into the trachea, then down the bronchi and into the lungs. The oxygenated air from the lung passes back up through the trachea during the inhalation. The tube that make up the bronchial tree perform the same function as the trachea. They distribute air to the lung. The alveoli are responsible of the primary function of the lung, which is exchanging carbon dioxide and also oxygen. The left bronchus carry air to your left lung. The right bronchus carries air to your right lung. Your bronchus are an essential part of your respiratory system. As you breathe and your lung expand, your bronchi distribute the air within your lung. The next slide is, what is the function of the bronchial tree? Firstly, the air passes from your mouth through your trachea. Your trachea divides into your left lung and so right bronchi. Your bronchi carries air into your lung. At the end of the bronchi, the bronchis carry air to the small sac into your lung called alveoli. The alveoli perform your body gas exchange. So now, let us continue with our last slide. Our last slide is, what is lung? Lung is an respiratory system that allows us to breathe. They bring oxygen into our body. It's called inhalation and send carbon dioxide out called exhalation. This exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide is called respiration. The lungs are responsible for the gas exchange between air that we breathe and also our body. They are protected inside the thoracic cage. The left lung has two lobes and is slightly smaller in volume than the right. It curves in the cardiac notch to accommodate the heart. The right lung has three lobes. During inhalation, air flows into our lung through the bronchi and bronchis. Oxygen from the air is absorbed into the bloodstream and it passes through the million of microscopic sacs, the alveoli, and also into the surrounding capillaries. Carbon dioxide waves diffuse the opposite way, from the capillary to the alveoli. The lung expel the dead oxygen during the inhalation. That's all from us. Thank you so much for listening.